The truest thing I know in this world is an honest auction. People think an auction is a circus, a fast-talking man up on a block making noise. It is the opposite of that. An honest auction is the closest thing there is to pure truth, because it takes a thing, anything, a calf or a tractor or a dead man's house, and it finds out exactly what it is worth, right then, in the open, in front of everybody, with no lying possible, because the price is just whatever a free room full of people will truly pay. I have spent 50 years up on the block finding the true price of things, and I came to believe there was no honester act on earth than my chant and the fall of my gavel. Because when my gavel comes down, the thing is sold for exactly what it was worth, and nobody can argue, because everybody watched it happen. And then, my oldest friend in the world taught me that you can take the honestest thing there is and hang a theft behind it, the way you hang a curtain over a hole in the wall, and that the best place in the world to hide a lie is right behind an honest man's good name. My name is Doyle Renfro. I am 70 years old, and I have been an auctioneer in Oklahoma my whole life. The county's auctioneer for most of it, and I want to tell this slow, the way you build a sale, lot by lot. Because the thing that nearly took my good name and my living and my faith in my own oldest friend was not a stranger and not the market. It was the law itself, in the person of the man I trusted most outside my own family. And the cruelest part is that the weapon he used against the whole county was me. Let me set the first lot down so you understand the man I was. I started calling auctions when I was 19. Learning the chant from my father, who learned it from his, that rolling, sing-song rhythm that is half music and half arithmetic. And I have called every kind of sale there is. The chant is the least of it, though it is the part people remember. Any boy can learn to talk fast. The trade is in the eyes. An auctioneer up on the block is reading 30 faces at once. The rancher who wants the bull but will not show it. The dealer bluffing, the young couple at the edge of their nerve, the man who is one bid from quitting, and the man who is one bid from getting reckless, and you play them against each other. You pull the price up out of the room the way you draw water up out of a well, a little at a time, never spilling it, until every dollar that thing is worth to anybody in that room is sitting on the table. It is the most honest game there is, because nobody can cheat it from the inside. The price is the price. The room decides, out loud, in front of itself. I have called million-dollar herd dispersals, and I have called a dead woman's button collection for $1 a box. And the same truth runs through all of it. That a thing is worth exactly what a free room will pay, and not 1 cent more or less. And that an honest man with a gavel is just the instrument that lets the room tell the truth. I gave my whole life to being that instrument. That is why what Royce did to me cut where it did. He did not just rob people. He made the truest instrument I knew play a lie. Livestock on Saturday mornings with the cattle bawling. Farm dispersals where a family stands and watches a lifetime go under the gavel, one piece at a time. Which will teach you respect for what a sale really means to people. Estate auctions in dead folks' yards. And, for 40 years, the county's auctions, the official ones, where the county sells off what it has to sell, surplus equipment and, the part that matters here, the property it takes from people. Tax foreclosures, when a family cannot pay and the county takes the home. Seized property, the hard auctions, the ones nobody enjoys, where what is on the block is somebody's whole world. Lost. I was proud to call those, and I will tell you why, because it is the heart of everything. When a family loses a place, the one mercy left to them is that it sells for its true worth, because whatever it brings over what they owed comes back to them, and on a fair day that can be the difference between starting over and starting under. So an honest auctioneer on a foreclosure is the last friend a ruined family has. He runs it straight. He works the room. He pulls every honest dollar out of it that the thing is worth. So the family walks away with something. I called those sales for 40 years, believing I was the last bit of fairness standing between unlucky people and the bottom. That belief was my whole pride. And that belief was exactly the thing my friend used to rob them. You do not forget a foreclosure sale, not if you have a soul. I have stood on the block in a farmyard in October with the family standing off to the side, the man with his jaw set staring at nothing, the wife holding the kids, watching strangers in the front rows about to buy the porch their babies learn to walk on. And the only thing, the one single thing I could do for that family was to work that room like my life depended on it, to wring every honest dollar out of those bidders, because every dollar over the debt went back to that family. And on a good day, it was enough to get them a start somewhere, a deposit, a truck, a little dignity to leave with. I have made myself hoarse pulling a sale up an extra $20,000 for a family I knew was watching, and seen the woman cry. Not because she was losing the place, she'd already lost it, but because the kindness of a fair price was the last decent thing the world had shown her. That was the sacred part of the job. The part I would have told you no one could corrupt. Because how do you corrupt mercy? Royce found a way. He let me keep performing the mercy, the hoarse, honest auctioneer doing right by the ruined, on the regular sales. So that on the rigged ones, nobody ever dreamed the same man's gavel was falling on an empty room. He used the real fairness I showed 9 families to hide the robbery of the 10th. There is no lower thing I can think of. And he was my friend. Now let me tell you about Royce Dillard. Royce and I grew up a mile apart on dirt roads, fished the same creek, played ball on the same dust lot team, stood up at each other's weddings. When Royce ran for county sheriff the first time, 40 years ago, I drove him to every pie supper and every cattleman's breakfast in the county, and I vouched for him to every man I knew, because I believed in him. And he won, and he kept winning, term after term, decade after decade, until Royce Dillard was not just the sheriff, he was the county. 30-some years as sheriff in a small county, and a man becomes the whole machine. He knows where the bodies are. He has done a favor for everybody. The commissioners are his. The board is his. The courthouse runs the way Royce wants it to run. And through all of it, he was my best friend. He appointed me the county's auctioneer year after year, and I called his auctions, and we had coffee twice a week for 40 years. And I trusted Royce Dillard the way I trust my own gavel. I never once thought to wonder why my honest old friend was so particular about keeping me, specifically, on those county sales. Let me tell you who I thought Royce was, because otherwise the size of it gets away from you. When my first wife was dying, long ago, it was Royce who sat up with me at the hospital the nights I could not be alone, in his uniform, having come straight off a shift, saying nothing, just there. When his own boy got into trouble as a young man, real trouble, it was me he called at 2 in the morning, and I went, and we never spoke of it again. 40 years of branding days and funerals and ball games and coffee at the same diner booth. Tuesday and Friday, his hat on the hook, my hat on the hook. He was the godfather to my daughter. There was no man on this earth, outside my own blood, that I would have trusted faster or further than Royce Dillard. And if you had told me he would use my own good name as the hiding place for a 40-year theft from ruined families, I would not have hit you. Because the idea would not have been real enough to hit you over. That is what trust is. It is the things you cannot even imagine about a person. Royce knew exactly how complete mine was, because he had spent 40 years earning it, and he spent it all, every cent of 40 years, to keep one curtain hung. I know why now. The way the theft worked is so simple it makes me sick. The county takes a family's farm or house for back taxes. It goes to auction, my auction. And what I did not see, for years, standing right up on the block in the middle of it, was that the room was rigged. The real bidders, the neighbors and the young couples and the honest investors who might have paid a fair price, were being quietly turned away before they ever got there, told the sale was postponed, told the title was clouded, scared off with a word from a deputy that this particular lot was best left alone. So that when I opened the bidding, the only people in the room were Royce's people. 3 or 4 buyers who fed into shell companies that traced back, if you knew how to follow it, to Royce Dillard and his cronies. And with no real bidders in the room, a farm worth $200,000 sold under my honest gavel for 30 to one of his shells. Legal as church on the face of it. A real auction. A real auctioneer. A real fall of the gavel. And then his people would flip that farm for what it was actually worth and pocket the difference. A difference that should have gone back to the ruined family, and was instead the spread between the rigged price in my room and the true price in the world. They stole twice. They stole the property from people losing everything, and they stole the difference that was, by law and by mercy, supposed to come back to those families. And the thing that made it all look clean, the honest auctioneer whose straight reputation meant nobody ever questioned that the price was real, the curtain hung over the whole rotten hole, was me, Doyle Renfro, the last fair man, calling rigged sales for 40 years and never knowing it. My good name, the very thing that kept anyone from looking too hard. I found out slow, and then all at once. There was a young woman in the county clerk's office, Carla, with a conscience that would not lie down, who had been watching the same handful of buyers win the same kind of lot at the same kind of price for too long. And one day she pulled me aside, scared half to death, and showed me a list. Just a list. The county's foreclosure sales over a few years, the assessed values next to the sale prices next to the buyers. And I stood there in the hall of the courthouse and read my own life's honest work turned into a column of thefts, and the same shell names over and over. And I did the auctioneer's arithmetic in my head, the thing I have done 10,000 times, finding the true price. And the true price of what I was looking at was that my best friend had been using me as the clean face on a machine that robbed ruined families for years. And I had called every sale myself. Carla was shaking when she handed it to me. She was maybe 30. With 2 little kids and a job in that courthouse she could not afford to lose, and she knew, the way you know, that the list in her hand could end her if it ended up in the wrong place, which in that county was most places. She told me she had tried to tell herself for 2 years that there was an innocent reason the same 4 buyers won the same lots at the same impossible prices. And then she said the thing that I have carried ever since. She said, "Mr. Renfro, I kept quiet because I was scared, but I picked you because in all of it, the one name I was sure was honest was yours. You always got the best price you could on the regular sales. It never made sense that these other ones went so low. I figured if anybody would know what it meant and not be part of it, it was you." And I had to turn and look out the courthouse window for a minute, so that child would not see an old man's face come apart. Because she had just told me, without knowing it, 2 things at once. That I really was the honest man I had always believed I was, and that being the honest man was the exact thing that had made me the perfect cover. My honesty had not protected those families. It had camouflaged the men robbing them. I will not pretend I took it standing. I did not sleep for a week. Because the thing that broke me was not even the theft at first. It was that it was Royce. 40 years of coffee and creek fishing and standing up at his wedding, and the whole time, every time he kept me on as the county's man with that easy grin. He was not keeping his honest friend close out of loyalty. He was keeping the curtain hung, my friendship, my reputation, my pride in being the last fair man in the room. All of it was just the thing that made his theft invisible. He had not just stolen from those families, he had stolen the meaning of my whole life's work and turned it into its exact opposite, and let me wear it, proud, for years. So I went to Royce. That was my mistake. And I have to tell it. Because it is the near miss. The moment the whole thing almost ended with me in the ditch. I went to my friend of 40 years, because some stubborn part of me still could not believe it. And I laid it out, and I gave him the chance to tell me there was an explanation. And Royce Dillard looked at me across the same table where we had drunk coffee for 40 years. And the grin went away. And what was underneath it was a thing I had never once seen in my oldest friend. A flat, cold nothing. And he said, "Careful now, Doyle. You have had a good long run as the county's man. Be ashamed to end it ugly. People would believe a lot of things about an auctioneer who'd been running those sales for 40 years, if it came to that. You want to think real hard about whose name ends up on this." And that is when I understood the whole shape of it. Royce did not just have the theft, he had the perfect frame, already built. Sitting there my whole life and I never saw it. Because who had called every one of those rigged sales? Who had brought down the gavel on every stolen farm? Me! If it ever came to light, the honest auctioneer was the easiest man in the county to hang it on. Because I had literally done the selling. Royce could step back into his sheriff's badge, the lawman who uncovered corruption, and leave Doyle Renfro standing on the block, holding 40 years of rigged gavels. And then he made it real. Within a month, the county stripped my contract. Word went around, his word, sheriff's word, that there were questions about how old Doyle had been running things, that maybe the county needed a fresh, honest auctioneer. Men I had known 50 years started looking at the ground when I passed. The one thing an auctioneer owns, the only thing, the thing worth more than the gavel and the truck and everything else, is that when he says a price is true, people believe him. And Royce took that from me with a few words, because a sheriff's word is heavy, and one old auctioneer's is light. And I stood there at 70 years old, watching my whole name turn to mud. And I will tell you, there were nights I believed I was finished. It is a particular kind of drowning, to lose your name. A man can lose his money and start over, lose his health and bear it. But your name is the thing you cannot rebuild with your own two hands. Because it does not live in you. It lives in what other people believe when they hear it. And Royce had reached into 1,000 minds and poisoned the well I could not get to. I would walk into the diner where Royce and I had taken coffee for 40 years and feel the talk drop a notch. Feel the looks slide off me. And I learned what a smear really is, which is that you cannot answer it. Because there is nothing to answer, just a fog of maybe, and you know how those sales were, that no straight word can cut through. And it was worse than just hard, it was clever. Because the more I protested that I was the honest one, the more I sounded like exactly the kind of man who would protest. I understood that Royce had not just attacked me, he had built the trap so that my own honesty, my own indignation, would look like guilt. You cannot beat the county, I told myself. Royce is the county. He has been the county for 30 years. One disgraced old man with a list a scared girl gave him, against the courthouse and the badge and 4 decades of favors owed. I came close, I will be honest, to selling my place and leaving the county I was born in. Not because I was guilty, but because I was tired and old, and I could not see the road where one man beats the whole machine. And there were mornings, the only thing that got me out of bed was that I could not think where else to go. You cannot beat the county. Royce was the county. 40 years of him being the county. One disgraced old man with a list a scared clerk gave him against the whole machine. I came close to just selling out my place and leaving the county I was born in. Because that is what a man does when the law itself has decided to bury him, and there is no higher law in reach that is not also Royce's. What turned me was a widow named Esther Pyle. She had lost her farm 2 years before, in one of those sales. My sale. And when the word went around that maybe old Doyle had been crooked, she did not believe it. because she had stood in her own yard and watched me call her place. And she came and found me, this little iron-spined widow woman, and she said, "Doyle Renfro, I watched you that day, and you worked that room like you were trying to save my life. And there were 11 people there, and not one of them bid against the Caldwell fellow. And I always wondered why. And I want you to tell me what is really going on. Because I lost my husband's farm for a song, and I have never understood it." And I looked at Esther Pyle, who had lost everything to Royce's machine on my own gavel, who the system had robbed twice over, and who still trusted me. And I understood that I was not the only victim, and I was not even the main one. The families were. And a man can be talked into lying down and dying when it is only his own name. He cannot, if he has any spine at all, lie down when there are Esther Pyles, who were robbed in his name and are waiting for him to make it right. So I stopped being a beaten old man, and I went back to being an auctioneer, which means a man whose whole trade is to find the true price of a thing and make a whole room watch it happen. I did not go to Royce's courthouse, because it was Royce's. I did not trust the county, because it was Royce's. I went up and out, the way you do when the whole local machine is rotten, to the state auditor's office and to a newspaper 200 miles away that did not owe Royce Dillard a thing. And I brought them Carla's list and everything I had built on top of it. The assessed values and the rigged prices and the shell companies and the patient work of tracing them back to Royce, which a disgraced old auctioneer with nothing left to do but be right turned out to have plenty of time for. I had the time and, it turned out, exactly the right kind of mind. An auctioneer spends his life with values, with what a thing ought to bring and what it actually brought, and the gap between them. And that gap was the whole crime, written in numbers I could read in my sleep. So I sat at my kitchen counter night after night, with property records spread out. And I built it the way I build a sale catalogue, lot by lot. Every rigged sale a line, the assessed value, the joke of a price it sold for, the shell that bought it. And then I chased those shells, one filing leading to another, a registered agent here, a post office box there, the same lawyer's name turning up too many times, until the boxes inside boxes finally opened onto names I knew, Royce's people. And then, twice removed and thinly hidden, Royce himself. It took me 4 months of nights. Nobody was paying me. My name was mud and my contract was gone, and I had nothing in the world to do but be right, slowly, in a column of figures. And it turns out that an old man with nothing left but his innocence and his arithmetic is a more dangerous thing than Royce Dillard ever imagined, because he has all the time there is and absolutely nothing left to be afraid of. But a list of numbers is a slow thing, and Royce could muddy it, could say it was the crooked auctioneer's revenge, and I knew it. So for the thing to land, for the whole county to see it the way you have to see a true price, in the open, all at once, I did the one thing I knew how to do better than any man in that county. I called an auction. There was a sale coming, a big one, the foreclosed farm of a family everyone knew, and Royce's people were already circling it, already expecting to get it for a song the way they always had. And I was not the county's auctioneer anymore. But an auctioneer does not need the county's blessing to know how a sale works. And I had friends in the trade. And the state auditor had, by then, started to listen. And a sale that is under a cloud can be watched by the state. So that sale happened with the state's people quietly in the room, and a reporter, and Esther Pyle, and a dozen families who had lost places over the years, and, because word had gone out the right way through the right mouths, real bidders, honest ones, who had not been scared off because this time somebody made sure they were not. And I stood in the back of that room, and I watched the rig fail in the open. I watched Royce's man, the Caldwell fellow, start his low bid the way he always had, expecting silence behind it. And I watched the silence not come. watched a young couple bid, and a neighbor bid, and the price climb up and up toward where it should have always been. And I watched the Caldwell fellow's face as he realized the room was not his this time, and looked toward the back for the deputy who was supposed to have cleared it, and not find him, because the state auditor's man was standing where the deputy used to stand. I want you to feel that room, because it was the finest thing I have ever been part of, and I never said a word in it. For 40 years, I had been the man up on the block running the sale, and that day I was nobody, just an old man in a folding chair at the back with his hat in his hands. But I knew that room the way I know my own hands, and I could read it, filling with something Royce's sales had never had in them, which was actual bidders, breathing, nervous, real, who had not been turned away at the door this time. When the auctioneer opened it and Caldwell threw out his insulting little number, there was a half-second of the old silence, the trained silence, the silence Royce had bought for years, and I felt my heart go down. And then the young couple raised their hand, and you could feel it move through the whole room like a current, the understanding that the rules everyone had silently obeyed for years were not enforced today, that it was safe, that the thing was actually for sale. And once a room figures out a sale is real, you cannot stop it. It is the most beautiful runaway thing on earth. The price climbing and climbing, hand over hand, neighbor against young couple, against an honest investor up from the city, past 50, past 100, past $150,000. Every dollar of it, a dollar that Royce's people had been stealing from rooms exactly like this one for 40 years. And Caldwell sitting there, grey-faced and silent, because his whole game only ever worked in an empty room. The gavel fell at a true price that day, and the sound of it was the sound of a 40-year lie breaking. And I sat in the back with tears running down into my collar, because I had spent my life believing an honest auction was the truest thing there is, and I was watching it be true enough to bring down a king. That farm sold for its true price that day, in the open, in front of everybody. And the difference between that true price and the 30 cents on the dollar Royce's people had been paying for years was suddenly a number a whole county could see. And the question every person in that room asked at the same moment was, if this is what it sells for honest, where did all the money go on all the others? That was the gavel, not mine, that day. I was only watching, but it was the truest sale of my life. Gets the thing that got its true price called in the open was Royce Dillard. The auditor's report came out, and the newspaper 200 miles away printed all of it. The shells, the prices, the trail to Royce. And once it was in the open, the local people who had been too afraid to cross him found their spines. The way people do once one person goes first. The commissioners who had been his suddenly could not remember being his. And the thing about a sheriff is that he is elected, which means, in the end, he answers to the very people he had been robbing. And they remembered, at the next chance they got, exactly what he was worth. Royce Dillard was voted out of the office he had held for 30 years, and the state took up the criminal end of it, the theft and the shells, which was no longer in my hands and did not need to be. And here is the part I am proudest of, the part that let me sleep again. I could have made it about Royce and me. I could have spent every breath I had left making sure my old friend died in a cell with nothing, and I had the standing to push it. The man who'd been framed, making sure the framer got the absolute worst. There was a stretch, after the threat across the coffee table, when that was all I wanted. But I am an auctioneer, and the whole of my trade, the whole of my faith, is that you find the true worth of a thing, and you call it out in the open, and you let the gavel fall. And then it is done. You do not keep beating on a thing after it is sold. I put the true price of what Royce had done out where the whole county could see it, which was all that justice ever really is. The truth, called in the open in front of everybody. The state would do with the rest what the law required, to protect the next county from the next Royce. But I did not need to stand over him. The families needed their truth and their money back. They did not need me to make a second career out of hating my oldest friend. A clean sale ends with the gavel, so I let it fall, and I let it be done, and I went home. Most of those families got something back in the end, when the state unwound the shells and clawed back what it could. And for some of them, it came too late to save the place, but it came. And Esther Pyle got a check that she said she was going to spend entirely on being a nuisance to her grandchildren, which I told her was the best use of money I had ever heard. I am the county's auctioneer again, for whatever that is worth, which to me now is a great deal, because I had to find out the hard way what the job actually was. The new sheriff is a serious young woman who does not grin at me across a table, and that suits me fine. I take my coffee at the same diner, in the same booth, Tuesday and Friday. The hook where Royce used to hang his hat is just a hook now. People look me in the eye again. A name, it turns out, can be poisoned in a season, but it can also be given back, all at once. The day the truth gets called out loud in a room full of witnesses, which is the only cure for a smear there has ever been. Some of the men who looked at the ground when I passed have come and shaken my hand and could not quite find the words. And I let them off easy, because I know what fear of a man like Royce does to ordinary decent people, having very nearly let it run me out of my own county. I do not hold it against them. I held the gavel. They did not. It is a different thing. I am back up on the block on Saturday mornings, calling the chant my father taught me, finding the true price of things in the open, in front of everybody. And I believe in it again, more than I did before, because I learned the one thing that can happen to it and how to set it right. An honest auction is still the truest thing I know. It just turns out the most important thing I ever had to find the true price of, and call out loud, and sell for exactly what it was worth in front of God and everybody, was not a farm or a tractor. It was a man I had loved my whole life, and the gavel, when it finally fell on him, fell true. They thought they could hang a 40-year theft behind one honest man's name, and that the honest man would be the easiest one of all to blame when the curtain came down. They forgot what an auctioneer actually does for a living. He finds the true worth of a thing, and he calls it out in the open, in front of everybody, until the whole room can see it. They left me holding the gavel. In the end, that was the only weapon I ever needed.